Chapter 1 Cold Boy, Chatty Girl. If you ever meet my best friend, Mikan, don't bother asking her about the weather, her studies, or what she had for lunch. She won't remember. She won't care. She'll only light up when you ask, "So, what's the latest drama you're watching?" Then prepare yourself for a 2-hour monologue with every plot detail, every tear-jerking scene, every line of dialogue quoted like gospel. Me? I'm the unfortunate audience she's chosen. Shen Wei, listen to this. The male lead is literally the strongest cultivator of his generation. Like, totally invincible. But the thing is, he's hopelessly devoted to the heroine. He carries her through storms, fights armies for her, even faces death without blinking. But there's this villain, right? He's completely obsessed with the male lead. Not the heroine, not power, just him. I kept my eyes on the window of the cafe, the city lights flickering against the glass. My reflection stared back at me. Sharp features, unreadable expression, the kind of face people mistake for arrogance. Cold by nature, I suppose, but Mikan didn't need my warmth, just my ears. She leaned forward across the table, hands animated as she spoke. And the villain, get this, he tries everything. Schemes, tricks, seduction, even shamelessly throwing himself at the protagonist. It's tragic, Shen Wei. Absolutely tragic. Because no matter what he does, the male lead is straight as a bamboo stick. He only loves the heroine. And the villain. He dies, miserable and alone, in the end. I turned back to her, raising an eyebrow. Sounds stupid, she gasped, clutching her chest like I'd stabbed her. Stupid? This is peak drama. Don't you get it? He loved so deeply it consumed him. He couldn't let go even when it destroyed him. That kind of love is a waste of time, I interrupted. If he knew the man was straight, why chase him? That's not romance. That's self-destruction. Mikan pouted. You're so heartless. Where's your sense of passion? Buried 6 feet under, probably. I took a slow sip of my coffee. Bitter, black, just the way I liked it. And you've clearly overdosed on these novels again. She smacked the table, drawing looks from the people nearby. Overdosed? I call it research. Do you know how many genres I've covered this week? Fantasy, historical, modern CO romances. Oh, and don't forget the tragic BLs. The angst in those stories could kill a man. I cried so hard yesterday my mom thought I was having a breakdown. I sighed. This was my life. Sitting across from a girl who thought fictional heartbreaks were national emergencies. And yet, as much as I wanted to tune her out, I couldn't bring myself to. There was a softness reserved only for her. An indulgence I never gave anyone else. Alright, so what's this one called? The Wuxia romance with the tragic villain. I asked, setting down my cup. Her eyes lit up instantly. Lotus blades under the moonlight. Isn't that a gorgeous title? Shen Wei, you'd love it if you gave it a chance. Doubtful. But listen. She scooted closer, lowering her voice like she was about to reveal state secrets. The villain? He's not just evil. He's actually brilliant, powerful, and ridiculously handsome. Like he could have had anything: wealth, women, kingdoms. But no, he only wanted the male protagonist. He even treated the heroine as an obstacle to be destroyed. Isn't that twisted? Isn't that romantic in a way? Twisted, yes. Romantic, no. Mikan groaned, throwing herself back in her chair. Why do I even talk to you about this? You have zero imagination. Because nobody else would listen. She stopped, then laughed, cheeks dimpling. True. You're my best friend, after all. Her words were casual, but they had weight. She'd never noticed how easily I carried her endless rants, her obsessions, her unshakable belief that stories mattered. For me, stories were just noise, something to pass the time. But for her, they were lifelines. And if listening kept that sparkle in her eyes, I'd listen 1,000 times more. Still, I wasn't about to admit that out loud. You talk too much, I muttered instead. And you talk too little, that's why we're perfect. She shot back, grinning. I gave a quiet snort. Perfect. Sure. One day, she'd get tired of dragging my uncooperative self through her world of dramas and fantasies. But until then, I'd sit here and let her chatter drown out the silence. She leaned forward again, her expression suddenly serious. You know, if you were a character in this novel, Shen Wei, you'd totally be the villain. Cold, untouchable, with a hidden soft side nobody sees. The type who dies beautifully at the end, leaving everyone crying. I stared at her, unimpressed. Thanks. That's comforting. Hey, villains are popular. Readers love them. Readers may love them. The story doesn't. They all die. Not always. Almost always. She fell quiet for a moment, then gave me that mischievous grin I'd learned to distrust. Well, if you transmigrated into a novel like this, you'd definitely survive. You'd probably outwit everyone, steal all the treasures, and laugh while the male and female leads do their lovey-dovey thing. Sounds more accurate. She slapped the table again, eyes shining. Exactly. That's why I'd pay good money to read a story where you were the villain. It'd be hilarious. I shook my head, lips twitching despite myself. Your imagination's wasted on me. Her laugh rang out like a bell, careless and bright. I didn't know then that the universe was listening, that the joke she tossed out so lightly would soon become my reality. But for now, I sat there in that cafe, watching her sip her strawberry smoothie with a pink straw, her cheeks flushed from excitement. My best friend, lost in her fictional worlds. And me, cold, expressionless Shen Wei, pretending none of it mattered. Chapter 2: A Twist of Fate. By the time Mikan finally ran out of breath, the cafe had already dimmed its lights for closing. Her smoothie sat half-finished, a melted pink puddle at the bottom of the glass. I glanced at my watch. Past 9. You've been talking for 3 hours, I said, sliding out of my seat. Correction, I've been educating you for 3 hours. Don't act like you didn't enjoy it. I gave her a look. Cold, flat, unreadable. She laughed, used to it by now. Outside, the night air was sharp with the faint smell of rain. Neon signs flickered across wet pavement, painting the streets in streaks of red and blue. Mikan walked beside me, swinging her bag like a child. You know, one day you'll thank me for entertaining you from these stories. Unlikely. Don't be so sure. Life is boring without drama. I didn't reply. We reached the intersection where we usually parted ways. She lived east, I lived west. The traffic light blinked lazily overhead. Go home safe, Shen Wei. Don't brood too much on the way. Okay? She said, giving me a small wave. I don't brood. She raised her brows. Your face disagrees. Text me when you get home. Then she grinned, turning away. I watched her until she disappeared into the crowd. Then I adjusted my coat, crossed the street, and started walking toward the bus stop. The city was quieter here, less crowded. Cars hissed across wet asphalt. A breeze cut through, carrying the faint hum of nightlife from blocks away. I thought about Mikan's words, her endless stories, her insistence that villains were romantic in their tragedy. Ridiculous. Still, a corner of my mind lingered on the idea. If I were thrown into such a world, would I really be the villain? Or would I carve my own path, untethered by someone else's script? The thought amused me. For a second, I almost smiled. Then the screech of tires split the night. I turned my head just in time to see headlights blinding white, bearing down far too fast. A truck swerved across the slick road, spinning out of control. There was no time to run. The impact hit like a thunderclap, metal crushing, glass shattering. My body jolted, pain searing through every nerve. The world flipped, blurred, dissolved. I remember flying, no, being thrown. My chest caving as air left me in a violent rush. And then, nothing. Silence. Darkness. I floated, weightless, detached. The cold street, the wet pavement, the metallic taste of blood. All of it slipped away. For the first time in years, my mind was blank. No Mikan's chatter, no neon lights, no bitter coffee lingering on my tongue. Just emptiness. Was this death? Oddly, there was no fear. Only stillness, heavy and deep. I thought of Mikan briefly, how she'd scold me for not texting her. How she'd cry when she found out. My lips twitched, but no sound came. Everything unraveled into shadow. And then, Faintly, a voice echoed through the void. Not Mikan's. Low, unfamiliar. Open your eyes. I tried. The darkness cracked like glass. A flash of gold. A rush of sound. Wind roaring, silk rustling. My body fell heavy again, pressing against something soft. Breath surged into my lungs. My eyes flew open. Chapter 3: Waking in the Wrong World. When I opened my eyes, it wasn't the screech of sirens or the blinding light of a hospital ceiling that greeted me. It was silk. Heavy curtains of red and gold swayed around the bed, their embroidery shimmering in the glow of lanterns. The ceiling above me was carved from dark wood, polished smooth, painted with clouds and cranes. The air was thick with sandalwood incense, warm and steady, far too refined for any place I'd ever known. I lay still for a long time, staring. My body felt heavy, unfamiliar, like I was wearing someone else's skin. I lifted my hand, and what met my eyes nearly made me flinch. Long, slender fingers, pale and elegant. A jade ring gleaming on the index finger. This wasn't me. Slowly, I pushed myself up. My chest didn't ache from the crash. My ribs weren't broken. My clothes weren't the ones I had worn last night. They were flowing black robes, the fabric smooth as water, embroidered in silver. The wide sleeves slid down my arms as I moved. A mirror stood by the bed, tall and bronze. Cautiously, I stepped toward it. The reflection staring back wasn't the man I knew. Sharp eyes, dark as obsidian, framed by long lashes. High cheekbones, a strong jawline, lips curved faintly in disdain even at rest. Hair black as midnight, tied with a golden crown. The aura was cold, untouchable, aristocratic. I froze. I knew this face. Not from my life. From Mikan's stories. This can't be real. My voice trembled, but the reflection's lips moved with me. I pressed a hand against the mirror, as if I could push the image away. But no matter how hard I blinked, the truth remained. I wasn't Shen Wei anymore. Or rather, I was Shen Wei trapped in the body of someone else. The villain. The very villain Mikan had described so animatedly only last night. The one who schemed and obsessed, who chased the male protagonist shamelessly, and in the end, my stomach turned cold. I remembered Mikan's words too clearly. It's tragic, Shen Wei. Absolutely tragic. He dies miserable and alone in the end. I staggered back from the mirror, gripping the edge of the bed until my knuckles turned white. No, 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 I muttered under my breath. This had to be a dream. Coma. Some sick hallucination from the accident. I closed my eyes, counted to 10, opened them again. Still the same. Still the embroidered curtains, the lanterns, the scent of sandalwood. Still this body that wasn't mine. I dragged a hand down my face. You've got to be kidding me. A knock at the door jolted me. Master Shen, the physician said you should rest. Shall I prepare your medicine? A servant's voice called. Polite, subdued. I froze again. Master Shen. That was me now, wasn't it? The villain with wealth, power, and, if I recalled correctly, an obsession with the male protagonist. Leave it, I answered curtly, surprised at how naturally the cold tone rolled off my tongue. The servant retreated without protest. Silence filled the room once more. I sank back onto the bed, my mind racing. All right, think. This was lotus blades under the moonlight, Mikan's favorite flavor of the month obsession. The story of a peerless hero, Lu Zhan, and his beloved heroine. What was her name again? Right, Lin Yu. They were supposed to be inseparable, shining like twin stars. And then there was the villain. My role. The foolish, tragic man who wasted everything chasing after someone who would never look at him. And at the end, he died. Horribly. A humorless laugh escaped me. So fate thinks it's funny, putting me in his place? My first instinct was denial, to wait it out, to expect that at any moment I'd wake up back in my own world with Mikan's chatter ringing in my ears. But as the minutes passed, the reality of the silk, the scent, the weight of the jade ring pressed deeper into my bones. This wasn't going away. I was here, and if the plot held true, my death was already written. I lay back against the pillows, staring at the ceiling. My pulse slowed, steadying. Fear gave way to something else, something sharper. Fine. If the villain was doomed in the story, then I simply wouldn't follow the story. Why should I? I wasn't the pathetic fool Mikan described. I had no intention of groveling at Lu Zhan's feet, of chasing a man who didn't even glance my way. Straight, gay, whatever he wasn't my problem. The heroine could have her shining hero. Let them play out their love story. I wanted no part of it. If I was to be the villain, then I'd redefine the word. Not tragic, not pitiful, powerful. Free. Untouchable. A smirk tugged at my lips. Sorry, Mikan. Your tragic villain just resigned from the role. For the first time since waking, my chest loosened. This world was strange, dangerous, but also lavish. And I had resources, authority, a body that could command armies with a glance. If I played it right, I could live comfortably. More than comfortably. As long as I avoided the hero and heroine, I'd survive. Simple. Outside the window, the moon hung high, spilling silver light across the courtyard. I let out a breath, long and deliberate, settling into the silken bed. The story thought it could script my fate, but I'd write my own. Chapter 4: Rejecting the Plot. When I woke the next morning, the first thing I told myself was simple. Chase after a man? No way. I sat up in the enormous silk bed, staring at the carved beams above me, and repeated it just to be sure. Absolutely not. No man, no protagonist, no idiotic obsession. If fate wanted me to be the pitiful villain Mikan had cried over, it could choke on its own script. I wasn't going to waste a single breath on Lu Zhan, or whatever doe-eyed heroine he was sworn to protect. Instead, I was going to live. The servants came early with my breakfast. Bowls of steaming congee, delicate dumplings, tea so fragrant it could calm an army. They bowed low, avoiding my gaze as if my cold reputation still held sway here. Master Shen, today's schedule. One began cautiously. Cancel it. The poor man blinked. Cancel? Yes, all of it. No meetings, no visits, no tedious rituals. I'll be exploring. I sipped my tea and waved a dismissive hand. Exploring? I glanced at him, and the servant nearly dropped the tray. Do I need to repeat myself? No, master. Of course. Enjoy your exploration. He bowed so fast I thought his head would hit the floor. Satisfied, I ate in silence. The estate I apparently owned was absurdly large. Gardens sprawled in every direction, filled with peonies, magnolias, and koi ponds glimmering like mirrors. Stone paths wound through bamboo groves, and small pavilions dotted the grounds for tea and poetry, though I had little patience for either. As I walked, I let my sleeves trail in the breeze, the silk heavy yet elegant. Birds sang overhead, and beyond the walls, mountains stretched like painted scrolls. This was my life now, not the suffocating city, not deadlines or exams, not Mikan dragging me through malls and cafes. Here I had wealth, power, and most importantly, freedom. And if I played it smart, I could keep it. I tested my body's strength next. In the practice courtyard, I picked up a sword hanging from the rack. The blade gleamed, perfectly balanced. Let's see what you can do, I muttered to myself. The moment I moved, muscle memory kicked in, except it wasn't mine. My body flowed like water, every strike precise, every step calculated. Sword forms I'd never studied poured out of me as naturally as breathing. By the time I stopped, the servants watching from a distance looked like they'd seen a ghost. Master Shen, your cultivation, it's truly peerless. One whispered. I sheathed the sword, wiping sweat from my brow. Good to know. So not only was I wealthy and feared, but I also had the strength to back it up. That settled it, no tragic ending for me. Later that day, I slipped beyond the estate walls. Disguised in simpler robes, I wandered through the nearby markets. Stalls overflowed with silks, jade trinkets, candied hawthorns glistening on sticks. Children darted between vendors, laughing, while street performers juggled and played flutes. I paused at a calligraphy stall, watching ink dance across paper. The brush strokes spoke of patience and elegance, something my cold persona would have scorned. But for me, it was strange and fascinating. "Would Master like to try?" the old stall keeper asked, offering me a brush. I almost refused. Then I thought, why not? I took the brush, dipped it in ink, and let my hand move. To my surprise, the characters came out bold, sharp, filled with restrained power. The old man's eyes widened. Magnificent! A hand like that. Only someone born to command could write so. I handed the brush back, suppressing a smile. Not bad for a beginner. As the sun dipped low, I climbed a hill just outside the city. From there, the landscape unfolded like a painting. Rivers winding silver through valleys, mountains cloaked in mist, villages glowing with lantern light. The wind tugged at my robes, cool and clean. I breathed in deeply. This was beauty I'd never known in my old world. No skyscrapers, no noise, no suffocating routines. Just freedom. And as long as I avoided the so-called main characters, it could stay that way. I remembered Mikan's voice then, echoing in my head. The villain was obsessed, Shen Wei. He couldn't let go, and in the end it destroyed him. A dry laugh escaped me. "Sorry, Mikan. I'll let go before I even start." The male lead, Lu Zhan, could shine like the sun all he wanted. The heroine could bask in his light. They weren't my concern. While they were tangled in their love story, I'd be charting my own path, collecting treasures, mastering martial arts, enjoying everything this world had to offer. And when the story reached the point where the villain was supposed to die, I'd be nowhere near it. I looked out over the horizon, the sky burning orange with sunset. This world is mine now, and I'll live it on my terms. I whispered to myself. The wind carried my words away, scattering them across the mountains. For the first time since waking in this body, I felt a flicker of something warm, almost like anticipation. The plot was broken the moment I rejected it, and I couldn't wait to see what came next. Chapter 5. The protagonist appears. If stories were storms, then today was when I first glimpsed the hurricane. I had no intention of running into Lu Zhan. None. I had woken determined to spend my day enjoying the gardens outside the city, maybe sampling a few delicacies at the market, and then coming home to drink tea in peace. Fate, however, has a talent for laughing at my plans. The mountains west of the city were known for their plum blossoms. Entire slopes burned white and pink this time of year, and the fragrance clung to the air like a silken veil. I walked the narrow paths leisurely, my sleeves brushing the petals that drifted down like snow. The world was quiet here, save for the crunch of my boots against gravel and the distant song of a flute carried by the wind. I paused, listening. It was graceful music, light and refined, the sort of sound that would make Mikan clasp her hands and swoon. I should have turned back then, but curiosity is a treacherous thing. The path curved, and I slipped into the cover of bamboo, peering out toward a clearing. There they were, the so-called golden couple. Lu Zhan stood tall at the center, his white robes catching the light, a sword strapped at his back. His posture was straight, sharp, every movement speaking of discipline. Beside him stood Linyu, the heroine, hair pinned with delicate flowers, robes soft as flowing water. She was the very picture of gentle grace, her eyes never leaving him. I almost laughed. That's the golden couple? Fine, let them be. They looked like they had stepped out of a painting, the noble hero and the virtuous maiden. The kind of pair readers would worship, Mikan included. I leaned casually against a tree, folding my arms. From a distance, it was easy to admire their performance. He handed her a fallen blossom. She smiled like the sun had risen just for her, and their shoulders brushed as though fate itself pushed them together. Charming, predictable, boring. Still, I stayed hidden, observing. Lu Zhan spoke to her in that steady, commanding tone of his. "Yuer, the sect competition is approaching. I'll ensure we take first place." Her lips curved in a soft smile. "With you by my side, I have no worries." I rolled my eyes. If Sakharin could kill, I'd have dropped dead on the spot. But I couldn't deny one thing. The man radiated presence. Even from a distance, Lu Zhan had the kind of aura that pulled the world toward him. like the center of gravity itself had shifted. No wonder the villain in the original story couldn't resist chasing him. Too bad for fate. I wasn't the original villain. Lin Yu tugged at his sleeve suddenly. "Someone's there," she whispered. Her gaze swept toward my hiding place. For a moment, my breath caught. I shifted back, pressing against the bamboo, letting the shadows cover me. Lu Zhan's eyes narrowed, scanning the trees. His hand hovered near his sword. Sharp, too sharp. I stilled every muscle, controlling my breath. A bird flapped overhead, startled, and he relaxed slightly. Just the wind. He turned back to Lin Yu, his expression softening. "Come, let's go." They walked on, side by side, deeper into the grove. Their laughter carried faintly behind them, fading with distance. I waited until the last sound had disappeared before exhaling slowly. That was too close. My heart pounded, not with longing, but with the sharp awareness of danger. To be seen now, this early, would be disastrous. If Lu Zhan caught sight of me, the threads of the story might tighten around me again, pulling me into the same tragedy I had sworn to avoid. No, I wouldn't let that happen. I stepped out from the bamboo, brushing a stray petal from my shoulder. The clearing was empty now, save for the memory of their presence. So that was Lu Zhan. Mikan had praised him like some divine paragon, a man who could do no wrong. Strong, noble, loyal. And yes, he looked the part. But beneath all that brilliance, I saw the same thing I always saw in protagonists. Trouble. The kind of trouble that devoured everyone around them. I had no interest in becoming prey. I turned on my heel and headed down the opposite path, farther from the golden couple and deeper into the mountains. Let them have their destiny, their shining victories, their perfect romance. I would chart my own course. In fact, I smirked to myself, the more distance I put between us, the better. I wasn't the villain anymore. I was simply Shen Wei, a man with luxury, power, and an entire world to enjoy. And as for Lu Zhan and Lin Yu, I'd watch them from afar like a spectator at a play. Applaud their drama, maybe sneer at the cliches. But step onto the stage myself? Not a chance. The petals swirled in the breeze as I walked away, the fragrance sweet and sharp in the air. Behind me, the storm gathered quietly. But I didn't look back. Chapter 6, Enjoying Life. If life hands you a death flag, the best way to survive is to walk in the opposite direction. So that's what I did. Forget chasing after the protagonist. Forget scheming against the heroine. Forget the tragic death scene Mikan once described so dramatically. I had no interest in becoming the butt of fate's cruel joke. Instead, I chose comfort, freedom, and maybe a little mischief on the side. My mornings began with training. The body I now inhabited was frighteningly capable, like a blade honed over decades. I barely had to think before sword techniques flowed through me with precision and grace. But I wasn't satisfied with rote memory. I wanted control, mastery. Again, I muttered, twirling the blade through another set of forms. The servants had long since stopped gawking. At first, they whispered about how their cold young master practiced until sweat soaked his robes, how his strikes split the air like thunder. Now they simply bowed from afar and cleared space whenever I stepped into the courtyard. Steel met steel as I set up training dummies with weighted arms, forcing myself to react to sudden blows. Each clash sent sparks flying. My arms ached, but the burn was satisfying. Afterward, I sat cross-legged beneath the old pine tree, slowing my breath, guiding chi through meridians I never knew existed before this world. Energy pulsed like molten rivers under my skin, thrumming with power. Cultivation, Mikan had once said, was the heart of Wuxia stories. Endless paths, endless possibilities. Sitting there with my eyes closed, I almost wanted to thank her for the accidental lecture. Without it, I'd have been fumbling like an idiot. Afternoons, however, were devoted to pleasure. Why not? If I had wealth and servants bowing at every command, I wasn't going to spend all my time sweating over swords. One day, I ordered the kitchen to prepare every delicacy I'd heard whispered about in the marketplace. Plates covered my table. Honey-roasted duck, dumplings bursting with broth, almond cakes soft as clouds. I ate slowly, savoring each bite, leaning back while musicians played in the corner. Master Shen, should we invite guests for the banquet? One servant asked timidly. Guests? Why share? I gave a lazy smile. The poor man bowed, trembling. As you wish. Some days, I wandered the markets disguised in plain robes. I haggled with merchants for trinkets I didn't need, watched street performers juggle flaming torches, and let children drag me into games of shuttlecock. You kick like an old man, one boy shouted, laughing when I missed the shuttle. I raised an eyebrow. Is that so? The next kick sent the shuttle flying high, vanishing into the clouds. The children screamed in delight, chasing after it. I couldn't help the smirk tugging at my lips. For once, I wasn't the villain. I wasn't feared, or loathed, or doomed. I was just free. But the real treasures of this world lay hidden in its corners. One evening, following an old map I found tucked away in the estate's library, I slipped into the mountains alone. The air grew colder as I climbed, mist curling around the cliffs. At the peak, half buried beneath roots, I uncovered a jade box sealed with talismans. A laugh escaped me as I brushed dirt away. So the original Shen Wei never thought to look here? Inside was a fragment of an ancient manual, half-burned, but legible. Techniques for channeling qi directly into one's sword, striking with enough force to shatter stone. Dangerous, yes, but exhilarating. I tucked the fragment into my robes, already imagining the possibilities. Days blurred into weeks. My cultivation deepened, my swordplay sharpened, and my pockets grew heavy with jade from clever trades in the market. More importantly, my expression began to shift. Where once it had been cold indifference, now a slyness curved at the edges, a quiet amusement that unsettled those who knew me. Master Shen is different these days, I overheard a servant whisper once. Different how? Another asked. He smiles. They said it like it was a curse. I found it hilarious. The best part was that Lu Zhan and his heroine were nowhere near my life. I heard rumors, of course. How they dazzled at sect gatherings, how their love grew stronger with every passing day. People gossiped endlessly, sighing about their beauty and devotion. I shrugged it all off. As long as I kept my distance, their storm couldn't touch me. I was steering away from danger. I was carving my own path, free from the chains of the plot. Or so I thought, because fate has a twisted sense of humor. And sooner or later, the hurricane always circles back. Chapter 7, A Small Mistake. If there is one thing I've learned in this world, it's that trouble arrives uninvited. You can hide, you can scheme, you can avoid every alley where fate might lurk, but trouble is persistent. It will find you when you least expect it. That afternoon, I wasn't looking for battles or heroes. I was simply traveling back from the mountain ridge where I'd gone to test a new sword technique. The air still hummed faintly with the residue of qi in my veins, and I was humming softly, yes, humming, when the quiet shattered. Steel clashed against steel. Voices shouted, fierce and desperate. I should have kept walking, should have turned down the side path and pretended I hadn't heard a thing. But curiosity is a curse, and mine drew me closer, step by cautious step. Through the trees I saw them. A group of masked men, blades gleaming, had cornered two figures. One, I recognized instantly despite never having spoken to him, Lu Zhan. Even bloodied and pressed against odds, he radiated that same unyielding aura. His sword swept arcs of light, cutting down attackers with frightening efficiency. Beside him stood Linyu, her robe torn, clutching her zither case like it might shield her from arrows. Yue, stay behind me, Lu Zhan commanded, voice low and firm. She nodded, eyes wide, trust written plain across her face. I exhaled slowly. So this is one of those ambush on the road scenes. Mikan did rave about these. It would have been wise to slip away. Let the protagonist shine. Let him slay enemies and grow stronger. It wasn't my story. And yet, an arrow whistled through the air, faster than Linyu could react. She froze, wide-eyed, death aimed directly at her heart. My hand moved before my brain caught up. The arrow split in two midair, halves clattering harmlessly to the ground. Silence struck the battlefield for a heartbeat. I stood there on the slope above them, sword still raised from the strike. Wind teased my robes, carrying plum blossom petals down around me. So much for keeping a low profile. One of the masked men cursed. Who? Lu Zhan's eyes snapped toward me. Cold steel and blazing fire all at once. And in that instant, I realized I'd made a mistake. I descended a few steps, expression carefully blank. How unsightly. My voice was calm, but my heart drummed in my ears. Lin Yu whispered, clutching her sleeve. Who is that? Lu Zhan didn't answer. He just watched me, gaze sharp as blades. The masked men, however, had no patience for theatrics. Another one. Kill him too. They surged forward. Well, so much for slipping away quietly. My blade sang as I met the first attacker head-on. Steel rang against steel, sparks flying. A pivot, a twist, and his weapon went spinning from his grip before he collapsed with a cry. Another came from behind. I sidestepped, letting his own momentum carry him past me, and clipped him across the ribs with the blunt edge. The rest hesitated now, eyes flicking nervously between me and Lu Zhan. I exhaled, flicking blood from my blade. If you value your limbs, scatter. The bandits didn't need telling twice. With muttered curses, they retreated into the forest, vanishing as quickly as they had appeared. Silence again. Only the rustle of leaves and the faint crackle of dying torches. I lowered my sword, expression unreadable, already turning to leave. That's when Lu Zhan spoke. Wait. His voice wasn't commanding, not quite. It was curious. Waited. I paused, half-turned. What? He stepped forward, blood streaking his cheek, his sword still in hand. Those eyes, steady, unwavering, locked onto me. You move like a master, yet I've never seen you at any sect gathering. Who are you? I kept my tone cool. A passerby. Lin Yu frowned softly. But you saved us. Not on purpose, don't misunderstand. Your fight simply got in my way. I cut in, perhaps too quickly. Lu Zhan tilted his head, as if studying me. His gaze traveled over my robes, my sword, my stance. I felt dissected under those eyes, pinned like an insect under glass. Finally, he smiled faintly. Not wide, just a curve of lips that carried more weight than it should have. Then I owe a passerby my life. I scowled. You don't owe me anything. And with that, I turned and walked away, refusing to glance back. But even as the forest swallowed me, I could feel his gaze lingering, heavy as chains around my shoulders. Lu Zhan had noticed me, and curiosity, once stirred, is not so easily silenced. What had I done? One small mistake, that's all. One swing of the sword to deflect an arrow. And yet, deep down, a chill crept through me. Because Mikan's stories all started this way. One meeting, one spark, one irreversible turn. I cursed under my breath, quickening my pace. This wasn't part of my plan. Not at all. Chapter 8, The Hunter Becomes the Hunted. I thought if I walked away that day, it would end there. One swing of the sword, one deflected arrow, one brief crossing of paths. That was all. I saved his skin by accident, and he'd forget me by the time he finished bandaging his wounds. After all, men like Lu Zhan had bigger things to worry about. Cultivation breakthroughs, sect rivalries, and of course his doe-eyed heroine who trailed after him like a shadow. But no, fate doesn't let go once it's sunk its claws in. The very next week, I was sipping tea in the city's most expensive tea house, enjoying the view of the river. My seat was tucked discreetly into the corner, away from wandering eyes. The fragrance of jasmine curled around me, and I was congratulating myself on how peaceful life could be when the door slid open. The room seemed to shift around him as Lu Zhan entered. White robes, steady stride, that unshakable aura that made people part before him like waves around a rock. And those eyes sharp, searching. I lowered my gaze to my cup instantly. No way. Impossible. He couldn't be here for me. Yet when I lifted the cup to my lips, his gaze swept the room and stopped, squarely on me. Our eyes met for the briefest moment. Damn it. He approached. I stood. I didn't bow. Didn't speak. Just placed silver on the table, adjusted my sleeve, and walked straight out the back door. Wait! His voice called, even calm, but I ignored it. My steps didn't falter until I was 3 streets away. The second time happened at the martial arts market. I was inspecting a blade, nice balance, though too flashy for my taste, when a ripple of excitement passed through the crowd. People turned, whispers following in waves. The hero of Azure Sect. Lu Zhan himself. He's even more handsome in person. I didn't have to look to know. My gut clenched. Before he could reach me, I pressed a pouch of coins into the vendor's hand and slipped into the maze of stalls. Ducking past incense sellers and jewel merchants, I vanished down an alley. I didn't even get to buy the blade. By the third encounter, I was seriously questioning if the heavens were mocking me. I had retreated into the quiet hills, training where even the birds seemed too lazy to sing. Sword forms flowed smooth as water, chi humming in steady rhythm. For once, I felt utterly alone, free from eyes that judged or worshipped. Then a twig snapped behind me. I turned, sword half raised, only to find Lu Zhan standing there, arms folded, watching me with that same unreadable gaze. "What do you want?" I demanded, sharper than I intended. He tilted his head, not offended in the slightest. "To thank you. I don't need thanks. You saved me," I sneered. "Not you. An arrow happened to pass my way. That's all." He stepped closer, the sunlight catching in his eyes. "Then let me rephrase. You interest me." I froze. Of all the words he could have chosen, those were the worst. "Not interested," I snapped, sheathing my sword and walking past him without a glance. And yet, no matter how many times I avoided him, he persisted, like a wolf on a trail. Silent, patient, relentless. I began to notice his presence at the edges of places I frequented. The market, the training grounds, even outside the estate gates. He never forced himself on me, never demanded more than a word, but his eyes followed me. Always calm, always steady, always weighing something I couldn't name. It was unnerving and infuriating. Meanwhile, I couldn't help but notice the shift in Linyu, the heroine, ever devoted, always standing by his side. But lately, her gaze lingered on him with the faintest shadow of unease. She'd speak, and he'd nod absently, eyes wandering toward something or someone else. Once, I caught them together in the marketplace. She tugged at his sleeve, whispering, "Jean, are you listening?" His answer was delayed, eyes flicking in my direction before settling back on her. Of course. Her smile was thin. I slipped into the crowd, heart sinking. This wasn't supposed to happen. The script was clear. He loved her, unwaveringly, until the end. I was the tragic villain, obsessed and unworthy, destined to burn out. But I wasn't obsessed. I wanted nothing to do with him. And yet he was the one drawing closer, again and again, no matter how many doors I closed. The hunter had become the hunted, and I hated it, because every time his eyes lingered, steady and searching, I felt the plot twisting, warping, wrapping tighter around me like a snare. And I knew this wouldn't end with silence. Not anymore. Chapter 9: Unwanted Attention. The worst thing about martial arts gatherings isn't the endless duels, the arrogant sect leaders, or the posturing of young disciples. It's the crowds. Too many eyes, too many tongues wagging, too many chances for fate to trip you into disaster. I had planned to stand quietly at the edge, watch a few matches, maybe slip away before anyone noticed. But fate, of course, has a personal vendetta against me. Because he was there. Lu Zhan. The moment he entered, the entire courtyard shifted. His white robes caught the sunlight. His sword gleamed like a shard of heaven. And disciples from half a dozen sects whispered his name in awe. The hero of Azure Sect. They say he defeated the Black Ridge Chief single-handedly. Look at him. He's like an immortal descended. I clenched my jaw and turned away. Let them swoon. Let them plaster poetry across his face. I wasn't here for him. Yet his eyes found me instantly. It was like being struck by lightning. Sudden, sharp, impossible to ignore. I looked away, pretending interest in a duel between two brats barely old enough to shave. But I felt his gaze like a hand pressed between my shoulder blades. The gathering stretched into evening, lanterns casting golden light across the courtyard. I lingered longer than planned, foolishly thinking maybe he'd lose interest. Big mistake. When the crowd thinned and the last matches ended, I slipped into the bamboo grove bordering the arena. The air was cooler there, quiet. I exhaled, shoulders easing. That's when a voice spoke behind me. "You run very well." I froze. Slowly, I turned. There he was, leaning casually against a bamboo stalk, arms folded, eyes locked on me with that infuriating calm. "Lujan, shouldn't you be with your heroine?" I asked. He didn't flinch. "She's safe. I wanted to see you." My stomach nodded. "See me? Why?" "Because you're the only man here who keeps walking away." I scoffed, starting past him. Maybe take the hint. But he moved fast. Before I realized, his hand shot out, bracing against the bamboo beside my shoulder. His body leaned in, caging me between the stalks and his presence. The scent of steel and pine clung to him, sharp, overwhelming. His breath brushed my cheek. Too close. Far, far too close. I stiffened, glaring up at him. "What do you think you're doing?" He tilted his head slightly, eyes dark and intent. "Looking." The word dripped with weight, and suddenly my heart hammered traitorously against my ribs. This wasn't right. Something was wrong. You're supposed to be with Yuer," I blurted, harsher than I meant. A corner of his mouth curved. Not quite a smile, not quite a smirk. "Supposed to be?" "Yes. She must be waiting for you." My voice cracked, panic sharpening it. His gaze didn't waver. Instead, he leaned closer still, so close the warmth of his lips grazed the edge of mine without touching. My breath caught violently, body frozen. I shoved at his chest instinctively, breaking the space between us. My palms burned from the contact. "What are you doing? You've lost your mind. Stay away from me." I hissed. For a heartbeat, silence hung heavy. Then, instead of anger, he chuckled softly. Low, amused. "Running again?" I turned sharply, storming deeper into the grove before my treacherous pulse gave me away. Behind me, his voice followed, calm and steady, like a promise I didn't want. "You can run. I'll find you." By the time I reached my estate, my hands still trembled faintly. I slammed the door shut and leaned against it, breath ragged. This wasn't happening. Couldn't be happening. The hero should have eyes only for his heroine. The villain should be nothing but an obstacle in his way. That was safe. That was certain. But now the hero's gaze was fixed on me, sharp and unyielding, as if the world itself had twisted into a new shape. And damn me, I had no idea how to fight it. Chapter 10 Mixed Signals. If running were an art form, I would have been its master. I changed my routines, shifted my training grounds, even avoided the markets entirely for a week. Yet somehow, someway, Lujan always managed to appear. Like shadow, like smoke, like fate's cruel joke made flesh. And worse, he wasn't loud about it. He didn't barge in with declarations or challenges. No, he lingered, quiet, persistent. And every time I thought I'd shaken him off, he would simply reappear. It started innocently enough. I was in the library courtyard, flipping through old cultivation texts. The sun dappled through the vines, pages whispering under my fingers. Then, without a word, he sat opposite me. I nearly snapped the book shut in his face. "Do you mind?" "Not at all," he said calmly, pouring himself tea from my pot. I stared, speechless, as he sipped with serene indifference. Another time I was training in the hills. My sword flashed in clean arcs, chi flowing sharp and bright, when suddenly a hand steadied my wrist mid-strike. "Your form slips when you overthink," Lujan murmured, standing behind me, fingers firm against my arm. Heat shot up my spine. I jerked free instantly, turning on him with a glare. "Don't touch me." But he only smiled faintly, eyes unreadable. It was unbearable. Not because of his persistence, I could ignore that. Not because of his stares, I could pretend not to see them. It was unbearable because somewhere inside me, a tiny part noticed. The warmth of his hand, the steadiness of his presence, the way his eyes lingered like he was searching for something he'd already lost. And that was dangerous. Meanwhile, Lin Yu was starting to see it too. I overheard them one evening at the sect banquet. I hadn't meant to eavesdrop. I was simply passing by when her voice cut through the chatter. "Jean, you've been distracted lately?" she asked. His reply was steady, almost too steady. "Have I?" "You don't look at me the same," she pressed, voice trembling. "Even during practice, your eyes wander. Tell me I'm imagining it." Silence stretched. I pressed myself against the lattice wall, pulse uncomfortably fast. Finally, he answered, low and calm. "You worry too much." Not denial, not assurance, just dismissal. Her breath hitched, and she whispered, "I don't want to lose you." My stomach twisted. This wasn't how the plot was supposed to go. She was supposed to be his anchor, his other half. Not me, never me. And yet the next day he found me again. I was at the riverside, skimming stones across the water, trying to convince myself the reflection staring back wasn't unraveling. Without a sound, he sat beside me, folding his long legs gracefully. He didn't speak, just watched the water ripple, then quietly brushed a stray leaf from my shoulder. The touch was so light, so deliberate, that I nearly dropped the stone in my hand. I rounded on him, irritation sharp in my chest. "Why are you doing this?" His eyes met mine, steady as always. "Doing what?" "This." Following me, staring, touching, acting like. I snapped. My words choked off, burning at the edges. "Like what?" he asked softly, voice so calm it infuriated me further. I stood abruptly, tossing the stone into the river with a violent splash. "Like this is some kind of game. I told you before. I want nothing to do with you." But even as I walked away, I could feel his gaze, warm and unyielding, tracing every step I took. I hated it. The irritation, the confusion, the way my chest tightened when his hand brushed mine accidentally, or when his eyes lingered just a little too long. This wasn't me. I wasn't the type to be flustered by anyone. And yet every time he drew near, the world felt too close, too sharp, too heavy. It wasn't in the plot. It wasn't supposed to be me. But try as I might, I couldn't shake the truth gnawing quietly at the edges. I wasn't unaffected. Not anymore. Chapter 11, The First Kiss. There's only so much a man can take. I had endured the stares. I had endured the quiet shadowing, the gentle touches brushed off as accidents, the way his presence seeped into every corner of my carefully guarded peace. But everyone has a limit, and Lu Zhan was intent on grinding his way past mine. So I decided to end it. The courtyard was empty that night, lantern lights spilling gold over the stone tiles. I waited there deliberately, sword at my side, chi steady in my veins. When his silhouette finally appeared at the gate, I didn't wait for him to speak. "Enough. You've followed me like a ghost for weeks, staring, touching, hovering. What do you want from me?" He paused, steps slowing, gaze locked on mine. Calm. Too calm. "You know what I want," he said softly. My pulse lurched, but I forced a sneer. "You want me? Don't be ridiculous. You're the righteous hero, the sect's shining star. You have your yuer. You have a path, a destiny. I'm nothing but a mere encounter meant to fall in your way." His eyes flickered, something hard glinting beneath the calm. "That's not how I see you. That's how I see me, and that's all that matters. And like I said, I'm not interested." I shot back. He stepped closer, each pace deliberate, like a predator closing in. My hand twitched toward my sword, though I knew steel wouldn't solve this. "Stay where you are," I warned. But he didn't. He stopped only when the air between us was so tight I could feel his breath stir against my cheek. "Interested or not, I'll figure it out. You keep running, but every time I catch you, your eyes betray you." He murmured. My chest burned. "You're imagining things." "Am I?" His gaze dropped briefly, to my lips, before rising again, steady and relentless. Something inside me snapped. I shoved at his chest, fury boiling in my veins. Stop playing this game. I don't want you near me. I don't want your stares, your touches, your... And then he kissed me, just like that, like it was inevitable. His hand caught the back of my neck, firm but not rough, pulling me into him. His lips pressed against mine, warm, sure, maddeningly steady. For a heartbeat, my mind went blank. My heart slammed so hard against my ribs it hurt. Heat surged through me, unexpected, unwanted. Then reality crashed back. I tore free, shoving him away with every ounce of strength I had. My lips burned, my breath came ragged. My chest heaved as if I'd run a mountain. No, this wasn't supposed to happen. I spat, voice shaking with more than anger. He didn't look ashamed, didn't look regretful. He looked calm, as if he had simply claimed something already his. You'll keep saying that, but your heartbeat tells me otherwise, he murmured, straightening his robe. My face burned hot. Don't twist this. My heart has nothing to do with you. He only smiled faintly. Then why does it race whenever I'm near? I hated him in that moment. Hated the quiet certainty in his eyes. Hated how he turned my own body into a betrayer. Hated the way his lips still lingered like fire against mine. I won't let this continue, I forced out, each word sharp as broken glass. I refuse to be dragged into your madness. I turned, striding into the shadows before the fury and confusion choking me could spill into something weaker. Behind me, his voice followed, low and steady, carrying far in the night air. You can deny me with words, Shen Wei, but your body has already answered. Back in the silence of my chambers, I pressed trembling fingers to my lips. The warmth was still there. The memory still burned. I clenched my fist until my knuckles whitened. No, I whispered to the empty room. This isn't the plot. This isn't supposed to happen. But my heart, traitorous and wild, beat an answer I couldn't silence. Chapter 12. Push and Pull. If one kiss could be written off as a mistake, what about 2 or 3? The problem was that Lu Zhan didn't stop. I had thought my fury that night would put an end to it, that he'd finally return to the script, to the heroine who adored him, to the role the heavens had supposedly carved for him. But instead, he doubled down. And I was the one trapped in a storm I had no defense against. The next encounter happened in broad daylight. I had just finished sparring with one of the elders, sweat cooling on my skin, when Lu Zhan appeared at the edge of the training ground. His timing was deliberate. I could tell from the faint curve of his mouth. I grabbed my robe and turned to leave, but he was faster. A hand caught my wrist, spinning me back, and before I could snarl a warning, his lips brushed mine again. Not deep, not demanding, just a stolen press that sent my pulse racing against my will. I shoved him back instantly, glaring. Do you have a death wish? He only tilted his head, eyes glinting with quiet amusement. You didn't pull away immediately. My chest burned. Because I was too stunned by your insolence. He hummed, clearly not believing a word. Another time, it wasn't even a kiss. I was standing by the riverbank, catching my breath after morning cultivation, when he came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. Just like that. No warning. I froze, my breath locking in my throat. His chin rested lightly against my shoulder, his voice warm in my ear. You always stand like the world is too heavy. Let me carry some of it. My entire body jolted. Let go. I don't want to. Lu Zhan, let go. My voice was sharp, desperate. Slowly, he loosened his hold, but his fingers lingered at my sleeve until I shook free and stormed off. And yet, every time I pushed him away, something in me trembled. Not with rage, not entirely with disgust, but with something I didn't want to name. When I lay in bed at night, I could still feel the weight of his arms, the warmth of his breath, the ghost of his lips. It made me furious. At him, at myself, at this entire twisted fate I had been thrown into. Meanwhile, Lin Yu was unraveling. At first, she tried to be patient. She smiled as always, clung to his arm during banquets, offered him tea after training. But he was distant now, distracted. His gaze strayed across the hall to where I sat, silent and cold, pretending not to notice. One evening, I overheard her again. "Jean, why are you pulling away from me? Did I do something wrong?" Her voice cracked. His answer was quiet, almost cruel in its lack of hesitation. "No, it's not you." "Then what is it? You said we were unshakable. You said—" Her voice broke, brittle as glass. His silence was worse than denial. I didn't wait to hear more. My chest ached too much. I left before the sound of her weeping could pin me in place. I wanted to believe I was still an outsider to this spiral. That her heartbreak, his pursuit, none of it had anything to do with me. But the truth was obvious. He was chasing me, and I was letting it happen. Because no matter how many times I swore at him, shoved him away, or locked my door, part of me waited. Waited for his knock, his gaze, his touch. It was infuriating. The breaking point came during a martial gathering. The sex had assembled, and all eyes were meant to be on the competitions, the speeches, the displays of strength. Yet somehow, between the press of the crowd and the thunder of applause, I found myself backed against a column, Lu Zhan's body shielding me from view. "What are you doing?" I hissed. "Taking what I want," he said simply, before crushing his mouth to mine. This kiss wasn't soft. It wasn't hesitant. It was demanding, fire and steel. His hand gripping the back of my head as if he'd never let me escape again. I struggled, fists pounding his chest, but my lips parted against his without permission. My body betrayed me, heat spiraling until my knees nearly buckled. When he finally let go, I was trembling, breathless, furious at the way my heart pounded as if it belonged to him. No, this isn't right," I gasped, shoving him back. His thumb brushed my swollen lip, eyes burning into mine. "Then stop answering me with your heart." That night, alone, I stared at my reflection in the mirror. My lips were red, my eyes unsteady, my chest a battlefield. I whispered to the silence, "This isn't me. I don't want him." But the memory of his kiss was too vivid, too searing. And in the deepest corner of my traitorous heart, I knew I was already caught. Chapter 13, Cracks in the Mask. For weeks I told myself I was iron. Cold, unyielding, sharp-edged. But even iron rusts when weathered long enough. And Lu Zhan, he wasn't the raging storm I thought he was. He was something worse. Quiet rain, persistent and gentle, wearing me down little by little until cracks began to show. It began with danger. A rogue sect had attacked the northern hills, and I found myself cornered by 3 assassins in black, their blades flashing cruelly in the night. My chi was steady, my sword quick, but one slip was all it took. Steel kissed my arm, warm blood soaking my sleeve. I gritted my teeth, ready to strike again, when a figure cut through the darkness like fire itself. Lu Zhan. His blade sang, clean and furious, scattering the assassins as though they were nothing but smoke. He stood before me, chest rising, eyes burning not with righteousness, but with something far more personal. "You're hurt." His voice was taut. "It's nothing. I can handle it," I muttered, pressing a hand to my arm. "You don't have to." Before I could argue, his hand was already steadying mine, his sleeve tearing easily as he bound the wound with surprising care. His fingers brushed my skin, warm against the chill of blood loss. I should have pulled away. Instead, I stood frozen, staring at the concentration in his expression, the way his lips pressed tight as though my pain was his own. Later, when the assassins fled and silence returned, I tried to leave without thanks. But he caught my sleeve, stopping me under the pale wash of moonlight. "Why do you always push me away?" he asked quietly. I snapped, the words spilling before I could stop them. "Because I want nothing to do with you, and you should take care of your girlfriend, not me." His hand tightened slightly on my sleeve. "I don't care about what you want. Things between me and her, I'll end it, if that's what you want." My chest lurched painfully. I scoffed, cold and brittle. You don't even know me, so why try to have me? I know enough. I know you hide behind that mask of indifference. I know you carry yourself like nothing touches you, but inside, it seems like you're lonely in this world. You think no one sees you, but I do. The words pierced deeper than any blade. I opened my mouth, but nothing came. No sharp retort, no cutting remark. Just silence, because for the first time I couldn't deny it. It's true, I enjoyed all the beauty in this world, but I don't belong here, and to be honest, I'm missing Mikan's constant drama epilogues also. That night, he didn't kiss me. He didn't press, didn't force. He simply pulled me into his arms. It was awkward at first. His strength wrapped around me, my body stiff and unyielding. But the longer I stood there, the more I felt the steady rhythm of his heart, the quiet warmth of his embrace. And against my will, something inside me cracked. My forehead lowered against his shoulder, my fists unclenched, and for a single fragile moment, I let myself rest. His hand traced slow circles against my back, and he whispered, "You don't have to pretend with me." The moon hung above us, silver and silent, bearing witness to the one thing I swore I would never allow. I softened. When I finally pulled away, my mask was already sliding back into place. But the cracks were there now. And once a mask cracks, it never fits quite the same again. Chapter 14, Giving In. There's a saying, the harder you struggle against quicksand, the faster you sink. I had fought, cursed, resisted with every ounce of strength I had. But somewhere along the way I realized the truth. Lu Zhan had already pulled me under. And the worst part? A piece of me no longer wanted to climb out. The day it happened wasn't stormy or hidden in shadows. It was in broad daylight in front of everyone. Lin Yu stood in the courtyard, her voice trembling as she pleaded with him. Lu Zhan, why won't you speak to me? Did I do something wrong? I kept my distance, arms folded, planning to walk past like I always did. This wasn't my scene. This wasn't my story. But then, Lu Zhan turned to her, his expression steady, unshakable. You did nothing wrong, Yue, but my heart has already left you. The words fell like a blade. Gasps rippled from the disciples nearby. Lin Yu's eyes widened, shimmering with disbelief. Left me? For who? And then, to my horror, his gaze slid across the courtyard. Straight to me. No, I muttered under my breath, already backing away. But Lu Zhan was faster. He strode across the stones, the crowd parting like water before him, until he stopped right in front of me. His hand caught mine, firm, certain, leaving no escape. For him, he said simply. The silence that followed was deafening. Lin Yu staggered as though struck. The disciples' whispers exploded like firecrackers. And me? My brain flatlined. My cold facade nearly cracked on the spot. Mikan's voice mocked me in my mind, shrill with excitement. What about this? If this story was different, and instead of Villain having a tragic end, what will happen if the hero abandons the heroine because he realizes he's secretly in love with the villain? Isn't that so dramatic? Back then, I had scoffed, told her imaginations were nonsense. Now here I was, hand trapped in Lu Zhan's grip, while he declared me as his lover before half the sect. Nonsense, indeed. That night, after the chaos, after the whispers and the stares, I confronted him. You've completely lost your mind. I shoved his chest, though it was more half-hearted than usual. In front of everyone? What do you think you're doing? Announcing me like I'm my partner. That's exactly what you are. He interrupted calmly, catching my wrist before I could pull away. His eyes burned, fierce and unyielding. I stared at him, throat tightening. You had a perfect, devoted girlfriend. You had the respect of the sect. And you threw it away. For me? Yes, for you, he answered without hesitation. My lips parted, but nothing came out. He drew me closer, arms sliding around me, and for once I didn't shove him off. His warmth seeped into me, melting walls I'd spent years building. You keep frowning when I kiss you, he murmured, brushing his lips against my temple. Because it's wrong, I said. He tilted my chin up, forcing my gaze to meet his. Don't tell me what's wrong or right. I've already chosen. And I chose you, because Lu Zhan's mouth was already on mine. Not stolen, not forced, claimed. And this time, I kissed him back with everything I had. From that moment on, there were no more shadows. We walked side by side openly. His hand clasped mine before crowds, his arms slung across my shoulders without shame. When disciples whispered, he silenced them with one glare. When elders questioned, he answered firmly, "He is mine." Lin Yu vanished from his side entirely. My chest tightened whenever I thought of her, but Lu Zhan never looked back once. His gaze was steady, unwavering, fixed only on me. And damn me, I let myself fall. His kisses left me trembling. His laughter softened me. His embrace made me forget the ice I'd wrapped around my heart. For the first time since waking in this world, I wasn't cold, or lonely, or waiting for an inevitable end. For the first time, I wasn't a villain. I was his, and the world would have to live with it. Chapter 15: Lovers Against Fate. When I first opened my eyes in this strange world, I told myself I would live quietly. No chasing after the so-called hero, no ridiculous love story, no tragic ending. Yet somehow, here I am, in wedding robes, my wrist bound by a red silk ribbon, standing beside Lu Zhan while the entire sect watches. If Mikan were here, she'd be squealing, shouting things like, "It's the ultimate romance, the cold villain and the righteous hero, married under the heavens." I tell her to shut up. But deep down, I know she'd be grinning at me with that irritating, "I told you so" look, because against all odds, I had fallen right into the kind of story she always raved about. The wedding was simple yet impossible to ignore. Lanterns lined the courtyard, bright as stars. The air carried the faint sweetness of incense, mixed with the buzz of whispers from disciples who couldn't stop staring. I hated the stares. I hated the noise. And yet, when Lu Zhan's hand tightened on mine, something in my chest eased. "Breathe," he murmured, leaning close enough that only I could hear. "I am breathing," I muttered, scowling. His lips curved into that infuriating, tender smile. "Then why are your ears red?" I snapped my gaze forward, refusing to answer. Of course my ears were red. It wasn't every day a man got married in front of an entire sect. Especially not to another man. Especially not when that man looked at me as if the rest of the world didn't exist. The elders recited vows, the silk ribbon binding our wrists symbolizing unity of fate. When we bowed to heaven and earth, my stomach twisted uncomfortably. This was too much, too loud, too binding. But then came the final bow toward each other. I lifted my eyes, and Lu Zhan was already looking at me. His gaze was steady, unshakable, filled with a warmth that made my throat tighten. When he spoke, his voice carried clear through the night air. "From this day forward, I stand with him, in battle and in peace, in life and in death. He is my partner, my equal, my only." The courtyard erupted in murmurs, but I barely heard them, because the words struck something deep inside me, something I had long buried under ice. And though my mouth refused to cooperate, though I wanted to keep my silence, I finally forced the words out. "Fine, then, I'll stand with you too." His smile widened, and I hated how much it made my heart stumble. That night, when the guests had dispersed and the lanterns dimmed, I sat on the edge of our chamber bed, tugging irritably at the layers of crimson silk. "This is absurd. Absolutely absurd," I muttered. Lu Zhan came up behind me, sliding his arms around my waist. His chin rested on my shoulder, his breath warm against my ear. "Absurd, maybe, but it's ours." I stiffened instinctively, then slowly let myself lean back against him. His hold tightened, grounding me. "You realize what you've done, right? By binding yourself to me, you've invited the world's judgment. You've tied your destiny to mine. There's no going back." "I know, that's exactly what I want," he said simply. His lips brushed my temple, his tone steady. My throat tightened. I wanted to argue, to scold him, to call him a fool. But the words tangled uselessly in my chest. because a part of me, traitorous and tender, wanted to believe him. From that day on, we walked together openly. His hand brushed mine as we strolled through markets. His laughter warmed cold mountain paths during training. When we sparred, he always held back just enough to tease me. When we explored forgotten ruins, he always pulled me close at the first sign of danger. People stared. Some whispered. Some even tried to oppose us. But he never wavered. Every time the world questioned, his answer was the same: he is mine. And slowly, painfully, I began to accept it. I wasn't cold stone anymore. I wasn't the lonely shadow waiting for an inevitable end. I was his partner, his equal, his husband. If Mikan could see me now, she'd laugh until her sides ached. She'd say, "See? Even villains can find their happy ending." And maybe, just this once, I wouldn't argue with her. Because against all logic, against fate itself, I had been rewritten. Not as a villain, not as a tragedy, but as someone loved. And as I lay that night in Lu Zhan's arms, our wrists still bound faintly by red silk, I let myself believe it. Our story wasn't ending. It was only just beginning.